Look, up in the sky! It's a bird! No, it's a plane! No, it's Super Shane! Woo! Protector of the people, friend to all. No need to fear, Super Shane is here! You guys have no idea how long I have been waiting to do that, okay? I'm not a real superhero. Maybe in my dreams, but no, not really. Sometimes, however, I do feel like I have the confidence that I could leap buildings in a single bound. Which is exactly what we're talking about this month. Confidence. And our definition of confidence has been this. It's learning to see yourself the way God sees you. When you know how much you see how God loves you, you begin to see how He can use you to be a hero in many different ways. When you can get into the mix and share His love, you can do that wherever you go. And you don't have to be a superhero or to have amazing powers to gain God's love, because He loves you always. And speaking of superheroes, there are a lot of different superhero-like stories in the Bible. No, really, there really are. Now, they may not have special abilities like laser eyes or they come from a distant planet, but they are people who are called by God to do really incredible things, and they were given confidence to do things that they didn't think they could. I mean, we looked at Joshua last week, and as we pick up another story today, we're going to look back at another time in the Old Testament, sometime after Joshua's heroic story, another time where God used somebody who didn't think they had enough confidence. Long ago, back when God's people, the Israelites, had turned away from God, God allowed another group of people called the Mennonites to take over the land of the Israelites. Now the Mennonites were like barbarians. They were bad dudes. They would destroy the land and slaughter livestock, and just people would have to move away. The Israelites had to hide away in caves so that they wouldn't be hurt or attacked. And whenever they would even try to go out to plant fields or try to tend their sheep, the Mennonites will show up and destroy everything. And at last the Israelites called out to God for help. And you know what? God heard them. There was a little farm boy just threshing wheat in a field. His name was Gideon. Now Gideon was sure that while he was out in the field, the Mennonites were going to show up any minute now. And so he was hiding his wheat in a wine press, not to raise suspicion. But as Gideon was threshing his wheat and trying to get the work done, he got a visitor, not from the enemies, but from something very different. God sent an angel of the Lord to speak with him. And when the angel of the Lord spoke to Gideon, he said this in Joshua chapter 6, "Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." Now Gideon didn't seem like a mighty warrior. I mean, this dude was hiding from the enemy. But he called him mighty warrior. Well, Gideon turned around and he said, "Pardon me, sir. You say the Lord is with us, then why has all of this bad stuff happened? Why are all the wonderful things He has done? What our people of long ago told us about Him, and we don't see Him? Didn't the Lord bring us out of Egypt? And now the Lord has deserted us. He has handed us over to the Mennonites." But the angel replied, "You are strong. Go and save Israel from the power of the Midian, and I am sending you." Now Gideon saw all the problems in the world that he lived in, and he knew someone needed to do something about it. And God had a special plan for Gideon. He wanted Gideon to lead his people to defeat the Mennonites. But still, Gideon wasn't sure how he could do it. And he replied to the angel of the Lord, "How can I possibly save Israel? My family group is the weakest of the tribe of Messian, and I am the least important member of our family." But once again, the angel reminded Gideon that God would be with him no matter what. Still, even with this direct message from God, Gideon was nervous about the whole thing. So he asked God for a special sign to help him know that he wasn't alone. Gideon went to get his sacrifice to the Lord, and he brought it to the angel. And when Gideon placed it on a rock and he poured soup that he had made over it, the angel of the Lord touched it and it was set ablaze. And at that moment, Gideon knew that God was with him and he could trust Him. Sometime later, Gideon was able to assemble a group of ragtag men to fight for the Lord. And when the Mennonites and the Amalekites gathered together, Gideon sounded a trumpet for the Israelites to follow. But even as the army gathered close, Gideon was still unsure of himself, and he pleaded to God for another sign. So Gideon one night put a wool fleece on the ground, and he asked God to cause dew to fall only on the wool fleece and not on the ground. And when that happened, he asked God to do the opposite, for the dew to be on the ground and not on the wool fleece, and for it to stay dry. And sure enough, God came through for Gideon. And at last, Gideon was convinced that the Lord was going to use him. Sometime later, again, Gideon camped together with 32,000 of his men at this water called the Spring of Harod, and they were almost prepared for battle. And it was here that God spoke to Gideon again, and this is what the Lord said to Gideon. I'm going to hand over Midian to you, but you have way too many men for me to do that. Then Israel might brag. They'll say, my own strength has saved me. So here's what I want you to do. This is what I want you to announce to your army. Tell them, those who tremble with fear can turn back. They can leave Mount Gilead and go home. God told Gideon that he had way too many men to fight a battle, and he wanted the Israelites to remember that God was the real reason they could win. He told Gideon to send them home, those who are scared and fearful. And Gideon did as God instructed, and 22,000 men went home, leaving only 10,000 men to fight. But still, God said there were way too many. So he told Gideon to take his army down to the water and watch them drink. And for those who got on their knees to drink, they were sent home. But those who could lap it in their hands and drink it, then they could stay in the army and fight. And Gideon did as God told him. And only about 300 men brought water to their mouths to drink, and all the others had to go home. So God said to Gideon in Judges chapter 7, with the help of the 300 men that you have, I will save you. I will hand the Midianites over to you, and let the other men go home. Now this must have been shocking to Gideon, but once again he obeyed God. And he sent home the men who drank on their knees, leaving only 300 soldiers to fight. And that night, God spoke to Gideon again. He told Gideon to go down to the camp of the Midianites and listen to them as they talked to each other. God assured Gideon that once he heard what the Midianites were saying, he wouldn't be afraid anymore. So Gideon obeyed God, and they snuck down to the camp in the middle of the night. And this is what happened. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling his friend about a dream he had. He said to the other, I had a dream last night that a round loaf of barley bread came rolling into the camp of Midian, and it hit the tent with such a great force, and the tent turned over and it fell down real flat. And the other guy's friend replied, that can only be the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash. Gideon is from Israel, and God has handed the Midianites over to him. He has given him the entire camp. So, in other words, Gideon overheard the soldiers say that they have had dreams that he was going to show up with the Israelites and defeat their camp. But once Gideon heard this, he bowed down and worshiped God right then and there. And then he headed back into the Israelite camp. He called out, waking his soldiers, telling them to get up, that he had good news that they were going to have victory over the Midianites tonight. And so Gideon got up, he got his army together, blew a trumpet, and they headed into the Midianite camp. And he told them, watch me, do what I do. I will lead you to the edge of the camp of the enemy. Then do exactly as I do. I and everyone with me will blow their trumpets from your position all around the camp, and shout with the battle cry for the Lord and for Gideon. The Israelites surrounded the camp, and they did exactly what Gideon told them to do. They sounded their trumpets, and they headed into the camp. But when this happened, the Midianites had no idea. They were so confused about what was going on, and they had to fight, and they fled in fear, and they were defeated. Gideon and the Israelites had won the battle. After the great defeat, the Israelites begged Gideon to rule over them and to be their king, but Gideon refused, and he said that God was their ruler. Now Gideon was a bit of an underdog, to say the least. He didn't really see himself as a hero. He didn't think that he was strong enough or brave enough or important enough to do what God had asked him to do. But in the end, Gideon chose to follow God, and God used him to save the Israelites. Gideon's story shows us that God can use anyone. He can use me, and he can use you as a part of his plan. This is our big takeaway today. God can use you no matter what. That you just need to trust God and put your confidence in Him. Gideon was just a normal guy. He wasn't anyone special, and he didn't expect anyone to save them. But when you think about it, that's often how God works in the lives of people. And all through His story, all through the Bible, we see how God used ordinary people to do amazing things. I mean, just think of just how Jesus chose 12 regular dudes to be His closest friends and to follow Him. Remember that God can do big things through you. You might not always feel ready. You might not feel strong enough, or brave enough, or big enough, or talented enough. But in those times, we can stop and remind ourselves that God is always with us, no matter what. You can choose to trust Him and believe that He can work in your life to do amazing things. Maybe that means you'll stand up for the kid who always gets picked on. Or maybe you'll take on a project at home that helps your family. Or maybe you'll come up with creative solutions for something that's wrong in your own town, or even in your own home. There's no limit to what God can do through you. And when you put your confidence in Him, great things happen. Guys, that's all the time that I have today. Have confidence. Be safe, and I will see you all next time.
We're not stopping. The party's hopping. Everybody say it's